Welcome to Podnutz Daily for June 20th, 2008. This episode is on Friday, so it's going to be the last episode of the week, and then we'll resume on Monday. Thanks, everybody who decided to watch us live. And as you can see, I changed the background. That's not done on purpose. This weekend, I'm getting a new camera and a new backdrop, so I could have some nice green screen action going on instead of the crummy stuff that I had up there before. But that'll be next week. Okay, I talked a little bit about a gaming machine I worked on yesterday. A kid brought in a gaming machine. I think it was a dual. It might have been a quad-core processor, huge graphics card. I mean, these graphics cards are getting so big now. They've reached the whole width of the machine. Like, you don't just put it in the slot. You put it in the slot, then you got to fasten it to the other side of the case. It's so big. Anyway, he was messing around with it, and I found out actually what he did today. He had him and his friend they bought 4 gigs of RAM, and they went into the BIOS to try to change the voltage of the RAM because the website of the RAM said that's what you were supposed to do. And after they tried to mess with the voltage of the RAM, everything got a little messed up. And I don't know if that directly had to do with the problem, because what was happening with the computer is you'd start it up, it would run for about a couple minutes, and then it would blue screen. Sometimes it would blue screen only when you went on the internet. Sometimes it would blue screen when you did other actions. And there were 2 specific drivers in the control panel that were not functioning, and every time you tried to enable them, the computer would reboot itself as well. The blue screen gave an error, and I don't have it. I wish I did. I'm sorry. The blue screen error was a system startup something. I'll find it and maybe put it in the show notes if I can remember it. But I didn't know exactly how to fix that problem. So like I did usually whenever I don't know how to fix a problem, just go to Google and I type the exact words in quotes of the blue that comes up on the blue screen. Like if it was a system setup malfunction, let's just say, for example, type quote system setup malfunction end quote in Google and see what people are doing about this error. A lot of times people will post in forums and stuff like that they've had that error and they know how to fix it, and so you could just look on Google and find a quick fix for that. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for Google, I'd probably be in the dark on a lot of things. It's how I repair a lot of computers if I don't know how to do it right off the bat. And then once I know, I have it and I know for the future. But use Google a lot for doing repairs if you don't know what to do yet, if you don't know what to do. Anyway, not too much information on the blue screen error he was getting. Some people said that in Vista, and by the way, it was Vista 64, and I've never worked with that, actually, so this was the first time. A lot of people were saying in Vista 64, you can't install the operating system straight off the bat with 4 gigs of RAM without doing some kind of fix. I don't know if that still exists. I don't think it does, but so I took 2 gigs of RAM out, still tried it. It was having the same problem. So it wasn't the RAM at this point. I think it was definitely something with the operating system. Also, the computer would start in safe mode, too. So if the computer ran in safe mode, didn't run in normal mode, you can thereby go through a process of elimination. Mike Petro talked about this in one of the earlier podcasts. By process of elimination, start turning services on and off. You could start by turning half of them on and then starting the computer and see if it boots. If it doesn't boot, then you know that half is bad. So then you cut that in half, and you try to nail down the specific driver or service that's causing the problem. Well, it was definitely so I went in there and did that in MS Config, turned off the startup options and turned off the services, and I kept all the Microsoft services on. And it started happening even in Microsoft services. Now, there's a lot of Microsoft services, and I didn't have a lot of time, so instead of going through and spending a couple more hours working on this machine, I called him up and I said, look, I recommend doing a reinstall, and he was okay with that, so we backed up some of his information, and we just did a Vista reinstall. He was fine with that, and that handled that computer. The reinstall worked fine, even though it was 64, Vista 64. All 4 gigs of RAM were in right off the bat. We didn't have to do any special fix, and that handled that. The kid got a great deal on his machine, by the way. He did a lot of research, went on Newegg.com and put pieces together and built a great gaming machine. It ended up being about $1,300, but usually people are going to spend about 2 G's for the machine he put together for $1,300. His first machine. Just thinking of the second machine we did today. Let's see, give me a second. Okay, well, my dad was out on site on a job, and it was a person was having problems with their wireless router and getting their wireless system hooked up. They had a wireless laptop, and they also had a wireless desktop. I believe my dad went into the router, changed, made sure that security settings were correct. The person was using WPA2 for their wireless network security, which is perfectly fine. The laptop hooked up great, but when you went to use the desktop, whenever you typed in the password and for the network security, it wouldn't go through. It was asking that it needed to be ASCII or a hexadecimal and a certain amount of characters. And usually when that happens, sometimes the wireless adapter doesn't support the security that you are trying to set up. Like, for example, in this case, we had WPA2 set up, worked great with the laptop, but the wireless adapter on the desktop was a couple years old and didn't support WPA2, but it did support WPA. So we changed everything to WPA, and it worked fine. Now, in some cases, for even older wireless adapters, WPA won't work. Even WPA1 won't work. So you got to go back to WEP. Now, if you've been keeping up with security and listening like Steve Gibson and Leo talks about it a little bit, WEP is worth almost nothing right now. It's so easily hackable that it's almost like having no security at all. But not everybody who drives down the street's a hacker. I mean, it's better than nothing. Let's just put it that way. So if you do have to settle for WEP, use it. I never liked it because I felt like it slowed down my connection a little bit. But in this day and age, it's good to be secure. So that's what happened there. And then we had a computer that, well, it's not even really worth talking about. At the customer's house, when they hook up their digital camera, the USB port wouldn't accept it. It would reject it. The processor was going at like 99. The Explorer process was running. It was running it out at 99. When we took it back to the shop, everything was fine. So we're thinking maybe a accessory she had, like a printer or scanner, at her place there, plugged in the USB port, was just maxing something out, and we need to figure that out on Monday. Let's see how much time we got in here. Let me talk about one more thing we did today. Had a laptop, and what was happening with it was we booted up. It would get through the Windows boot up screen all the way to the blue screen where you have to click on a username and type in a password. And once it got to that point, it would freeze. So what we did was we ran check disk on the system. We got to check it on Monday to see how it turned out. But check disk can handle things like that in the operating system when they're acting all crazy. And finally, everything else I talked about yesterday. So that's it for the computers. Okay, anybody want to give a call in? Skype at Podnutz Daily.